Hey friends, welcome back to Perfection Hangover. Today's episode is going to be a little bit more personal than usual, and honestly, it's coming from a place of real life frustration and reflection. I almost didn't record this episode because one thing I never want this podcast to become is a place where I complain about people or drag anyone through the mud. That's not what this space is about. But I also believe that there are conversations a lot of women are quietly having in their hearts, and sometimes we need someone to say it out loud in a thoughtful way. So, today I want to talk about something that many blended families deal with but don't always talk about openly. What happens when you're trying to build a peaceful life, but someone else hasn't moved on from the past? Here's a story that has been on my heart. Before I get into this topic, I want to share something that's been seriously weighing on me lately. If you're part of a blended family, you know that healing after divorce isn't just about the adults, it's about the kids too. And sometimes the hardest part is watching the kids struggle to move forward because the adults around them are still stuck in the past. Over the last little while, I've had moments where I've seen how heavy that can be for my partner's girls and for my own kids as well. Kids are incredibly perceptive. They pick up on tension, they feel the emotional climate around them, and even when adults think they're hiding it, they're not. They hear things, they sense things, they carry things, and sometimes what breaks my heart is realizing that kids don't always get the freedom to emotionally move forward if the adults in their lives haven't done that work themselves yet. Kids naturally want peace. They want to love both parents. They want everyone to get along, and they want to feel like it's a safe place to enjoy the life that they're living now. But when conflict keeps resurfacing, when the past keeps getting pulled back into the present, it can leave the kids feeling like they're standing in the middle of something they never even asked for. And as someone who loves those girls and my own kids deeply, it's very hard for me to watch because my heart isn't about winning an argument or proving a point. My heart is that kids, even young adults, deserve the freedom to grow up without carrying the emotional weight of unresolved conflict between adults. They deserve to feel like it's okay to love everyone in their life without guilt or tension. And that's really what today's conversation is about. Healing doesn't mean that everyone heals, and definitely not at the same pace. So, one of the hardest lessons that I've learned in this life is that just because you grow doesn't mean that everyone around you grows with you. You can go to therapy, work on yourself, deepen your faith. You can learn healthier communication, and yet sometimes you're still connected to people who operate from a place of hurt, anger, or unresolved pain. That's a reality many people face after divorce, especially when there are kids involved. You can't always completely close the door on the past because there are still connections that exist through your kids. And that can be incredibly frustrating when you work so hard to create a peaceful, stable life. If I'm being completely honest, the hardest part isn't always the conflict itself. The hardest part is the temptation to react, to defend yourself, to explain your side, to set the record straight, and finally say all the things you've been quiet about. Because when someone pushes and pushes and pushes, every human instinct says, push back. But over time, I've started asking myself a different question. Will reacting actually create peace, or will it just keep me tied to the chaos? And most of the time, the answer is pretty clear. Engaging in the drama might feel good for a moment, but it rarely leads to peace. And honestly, let's be real, it's not fun being caught up in drama. Okay. Another thing I've had to learn is that boundaries are not the same thing as bitterness. Rewind that back. Sometimes people assume that if you stop engaging in certain conversations or situations, it means you're angry or unforgiving. But often it simply means that you've grown. You've realized that protecting your peace and protecting your kids' emotional environment is more important than winning an argument. You can forgive someone and still recognize that certain patterns are unhealthy. You can wish someone well and still choose not to participate in the cycle of conflict. That is not hatred, friends. That's wisdom. This is where my faith becomes really important to me. Because one of the hardest things about high conflict situations is realizing that you cannot control someone else's behavior. You cannot control what someone says about you. You can't control how someone interprets things. You can't control whether they choose healing. The only thing that you can control is your own response. And there's a lot of peace in remembering that God sees what people don't. He knows the truth of your heart. Sometimes choosing the higher road means trusting that you don't have to fight every battle yourself. Sometimes peace looks like stepping back and letting God handle what you can't control. I am a control freak. I like to be in control of my own life and everything around me. I am learning to let go and let God take the wheel. So, if you're listening to this and you are part of a blended family or dealing with a high conflict relationship, I want you to know something. Trying to build a peaceful life when someone else continues to operate in chaos can feel exhausting, defeating, but their choices do not define your life, and they don't get to define your children's future either. Kids deserve the chance to grow up in an environment where peace is possible. They deserve to feel safe, loving everyone in their lives without guilt trips. They deserve adults who are willing to choose healing even when it's hard. And sometimes choosing healing means refusing to keep replaying the past. It's not insensitive, it just means choosing maturity over reaction, peace over proving a point, grace over resentment. That doesn't mean the situation is easy, but it does mean that someone else's chaos doesn't get the final say over your own healing. And honestly, that's what surrendering perfection and embracing transformation really looks like. Thanks for being here with me today. I will talk to you in the next episode.